Okay, so where's the proof of this?
Thank you. So we're ready to move on to Kelly. I always want to say Escalent. Sorry about this, Kelly. I do apologize. Kelly Lloyd.
I'll take care of this one,
Okay.
Madam Chair. We've put this on the agenda today only because we're sure that members of council are hearing about the Alberta Solar Program. We have nothing in our 2016 budget to move forward a solar program. The guidebook and the grant program, 20 cent dollars is what they're offering. And we just wanted to make council aware that we're aware of the program, but we're not anticipating doing anything in 16 to move forward with a solar project.
Just a question, Mr. McInnes. For future municipal buildings, will we be looking more at solar programs and other energy efficient ways when we build our buildings?
I would think yes, and we can even look at retrofits. Like I say, chasing 20 cent dollars in this environment right now doesn't seem to be a good strategy for us. But as we go forward, and I certainly see alternative energy becoming more and more a necessity as we go forward. So unless there's a strong feeling from council that we should take advantage of this particular program and possibly do some spring adjustments to the budget before we bring the tax rate bylaw to council in April, there will be nothing in this planning cycle for it.
Sort of indicate from council that there doesn't seem to be a desire to move that direction yet. So thank you very much for the information. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, offsite levy report, pages 65 to 125. And I believe this is Mr. Wright who's taking the lead on this. Is that correct?
Well, Storm can do it.
No, this one's a little bit more complex than that.
Come on. Well, let's see. Are we on? Okay. Thanks for reading ahead in advance, of which I presume you all did with some diligence.
Yes.
This has been quite a long-term effort on the part of many people. Garth and myself started this last portion last summer in terms of offsite levy. We're trying to get it compiled down to a little shorter format as we go, so I've got a brief PowerPoint for you this afternoon. We took out excerpts from the report to try to get a little closer and nearer to some of the questions and answers that we felt you may have, and that was the written portion. Anyway, without any further ado, we've got our offsite levy draft report here, and if you're aware of the different facets of the Municipal Government Act, it comes under 648 about how and when and under what circumstances we may be allowed to collect offsite levies. It's pretty straightforward. It appears on the surface, but when you really dig deep into it, it's much more complex than that. One of the basics we've used in the town of Olds is that with our bunch report and all the background work we've done, that we feel within the annexation lands of 2008, our full build-out population is 35,000. This little excerpt slide here is from Alberta Transportation's functional plans for Highway 27 and Highway 2 and 27. And they're pretty close. They use a population build-out of 32,500. But the real important part of Alberta Transportation's overview is their annual average daily traffic vehicles per day, that 50,000. You need quite a sophisticated transportation network to support and maintain that. And you already had intersections that are starting to come up and be overutilized or are not at a high level technical function. And we've heard the discussions and debates from council. Anyway, our existing land use bylaw was put together in 2005 by Stantec. It is more of a blanket overall off-site levy, one rate for water, wastewater, roads, and some stormwater. It really didn't have the detailed basis that we have now. And we've been encouraged by many people, including Brownlee Law, other municipalities and that, and developers, to be much more succinct about where and why we're charging off-site levies. And that brought about all the issues of the Bunch report and all the details we went through on that. With the Bunch report, there was over 100 plus new development items in roads and linkages and water and wastewater. With the Bunch report, we had to take into account, say, the work of the regional wastewater system, because it changed our balance totally in how we should look at offsites and what we would need to construct for the future. The water supply, the same thing. We don't have water treatment facilities, but we have reservoirs and trunk mains, which have to be built. In some cases, we probably need PRVs in the future and things of that nature. Our transportation plan has changed so much with the work that Alberta Transportation did on the 27 functional plan, and then their review of the overpass at 2 and 27. As they did not want to spend the dollars and invest in the time and money for a north bypass road or a south bypass road. The cost of that, they told us at one time, would probably approach $100 million. I think that was one of the numbers, Norm, give me? About in that ballpark. So transportation, in their minds, did analysis of 13 communities in Alberta, us being one, town of Athabasca being another one, and they decided that the major traffic flow on their highway was produced by the town of Olds and our residents. So therefore, we had to spend money to put into our arterial roadways north and south, and if we wanted to maintain our roadway and highway through the community so we didn't disrupt business, that would become part of our responsibility. So with that in mind, that Bunch transportation plan becomes very critical in the annexation lands north and south of Olds, and that's what we're trying to portray in the drawings and the graphics, okay? And this is difficult to follow. This is not easy stuff. And anyway, just to give you an idea on our PowerPoints here, this is a number of documents that we really had to go through, review, analyze, and put together just to come close to what the future may look like in 20, 25 years and at a population of 35,000. And then some of the other work that's continuing on is we haven't revisited the municipal development plan since 2005. So we still have a few items in our offsite levies right now that we have to hold on to until we see where the new municipal development plan amendments may occur. We also have our working team, and Kelly's part of that, on asset management. The work we've done here in the Bunch work and the ISL work gives us what our future assets will be. So we have the existing assets that finance is documenting and bringing into the asset management plan. This is a really strong guiding piece for the future assets and will give you the ability to project into the future and also to build our reserves, which is quite critical. It's not an easy thing. If you were to count up the documents and the funds spent by the province, the wastewater commission, the water commission, the county, ourselves, and others, I'm not sure what the cost would be on that page, but I'm sure it's around the $750,000 mark. So a lot of background work here. Okay. Okay, where are we moving to? Ahead here. Yeah, in our, we put our graphics in this short form PowerPoint. We thought it might be helpful for the press and others to follow, but it just follows along with the main report, our benefiting areas, our area structure plans and that. The area structure plans that we have to deal with alone, the ownership group is from Vancouver, all through British Columbia, Alberta, and out to Quebec, and down into the US, and there's a couple of offshore partners on the Pacific Rim. We count up about 30 different people, organizations, or contacts that we're going to have to go through a consultation process through. One of our difficulties is we don't have a key group that does that. We discussed the City of Calgary, their recent offsite levy review process and bylaws, and they brought those into their council on the 11th of January. We talked to them in November and December, and we talked to the Urban Development Institute, and they were able to give us briefing details and how their constituent members felt about that. Calgary had 7 other groups that provided input and consultation on their process, but you've got to imagine the size of Calgary and moving towards 2 million population. Not an easy thing. Mayor? You look like you have a question.
No, I just said, when you said 2 million, it just sounded to me, I'm sorry, I was born and raised there, and I thought, thank goodness I live in Olds.
Yeah, well, you look at Calgary right now, you're between 1.2 and 1.3 million, and they have to project out to at least 2 million minimum. Well, you look at us, we're at about 10,000 with college right now. We're projected to 35.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah. When we did this process in Fort McMurray, we were projecting from about 60,000 up to $250 million and $2 billion worth of infrastructure. This, again, not easy stuff, folks, but we're trying. Up there. Anyway, we've got water graphics, and what we also tried to do with this document is build a benchmark. When I tried to look back and go through all the records back to 204 and 205, I couldn't really collect and pick up on all the details. And we realized, given the fact that some of us, not all of us are aging, that we need to think about succession planning, but succession education. So we've got young planners, we've got young engineering techs, we've got new people in our finances working with Garth, and that's going to continue on for the near future. So we needed a really strong benchmark document, where the costs, where the improvements, where's this background coming from. We also need to defend business and industry. Where's your cost coming from? Why? Nobody wants to pay more costs. Nobody wants to really see another form of taxation. But this is, again, it's pretty critical items and things. And hopefully the graphics make it easier. We're able to use the 2013 aerial photographic map to put all our graphics together on. And we really have to give credit to Bunt and BSEI, who did the work in 2010. They went back in their files and supplied AutoCAD drawings so we could put them on the GIS base at no cost. So you have to appreciate people that were interested and have a passion for the work. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. We're not getting there.
Do you need a driver?
She's ignoring me.
Okay.
I got her money. Anyway, yeah, the written text, we thought we'd just bring it right over and import it. One of the interesting things we pulled out of the City of Calgary's documentation was a key municipal infrastructure message. And that's a little bit of a shocker when you talk about Canadian cities, competitiveness, economic development. And when you see a comment, $1.1 trillion, that's about $80,000 per household. This is important things. Economic development wise, infrastructure, tax, everything. Our process, it's really hard to follow all the steps you need to go through something like this, but we thought we'd put it in a little bit of text and a little bit of graphics. And right now we feel we're at the consultation and council process stage, which is about 4th down the list there. And it's really key when we're looking at these 30 landholders, stakeholders, and developers scattered all across the continent, and to have a process. And we know, even though we're at the report stage right now, we probably got 5 months of work still. City of Calgary, with all their constituent groups and everyone organized to the T, 9 months. 9 months before they could bring it to council. So that's why we've got the small plan and process. There we go. Anyway, we thought we'd also do a little basic graphic that may help the process as well. And it's just a repeat basically of our text, but it also shows a few timelines, and we're looking at as far out as 2017 in the early stages. Because we see implementation, even if you're going through it as part of your budget process, your tax process, utility process, that the implementation stage will probably come in early 2017. And also it gives everybody a chance to breathe and opportunities. Offsite levy, options, opportunities. Some of the things we're leading up to. This benchmark for capital construction costs. We went back through all our records and our awarded tenders from 2009 to 2015. And the consultants did a calculation that was 1.8% annual cost increases in construction. We went back and we know we have had no increases in the benchmark rates from 2005 to 2015. If we look at implementation in 2017 and you look at anywhere from 1.8 to 2% increase per year, you're already looking at a 30% change. That's why we need to talk to the industry. That's a shock to the system. Other parts, we've talked a little bit about it, is Brownlee Law and others have said really you need to move to at least annual or biannual reviews. If that's the case, let's just put it in policy that it's part of taxation and annual process, because you've got utility rate changes, you've got tax changes, provincial education tax moves and changes, and particularly industrial. You have the provincial assessments of industrial equipment, and they may change given some of the NDP proposals for carbon tax and other things that may affect the equipment. So that's why we're noting all these points. Again, we're talking about policy and procedures to incorporate incremental change in offsite levies. We're really worried about creating a negative economic development impact situation in Olds. If you push these rates up, say 30% in one go, this is not the best economy I've ever seen since 1981, and we may really have a detrimental effect. So incremental change, I think, is something that really bears strong consideration. Now, the other thing is industrial development, which we've looked at in the past in 2014 and 2015, costs more money and is not spread over lots like a residential development. They have different needs, different ways of working in that. Just the roadways alone, you have to have heavy-duty roadways, arterial roadways, or high-end collector roadways. There's a cost associated with that that's higher than residential. What we've looked at and what ISL has started to pull apart for us and identify is by quarter sections or industrial area or different components of the community. And what we may come back with after consultation is that there's a benchmark rate across the community, but we might need and have special needs to promote industrial growth, and we may look at a top up there. We did that in different areas of Fort McMurray, just because it was so expensive to develop there, and with regards to some of the industrial. Let me see, payment items. It's always a problem, and Scott and Norm and many others can attest to when you're doing a development agreement. How do you recover your costs? When do you recover your costs? One of the areas that we really struggled with when I came here was when you had major developments like Cornerstone, who developed 35 acres in one go, and they paid all the upfront money for the 67A intersection on Highway 27. 6 years later, we went back in time, And because there was an endeavor to assist as part of the development agreement, but it was not defined by formula or process or traffic or demand or consumption, cost $28,000 in the better part of a year and a half to go back in time and assign costs to, say, the credit union building in that site, Loblaws, and get through some of the fights and disparity in that. So as part of this offsite levy process, we want to identify endeavors to assist in terms of payment development agreements because it does impact on your offsite levies and your carrying costs. Development permits, we've at times looked at payment cycles and deferments, which are allowed in the MGA. 1, 2, or 3 years is not unknown. Calgary used to have a system where they deferred the payments out to 4 years and at a 50% rate. Now they've changed that and they have another totally different rate structure and approach. So again, it's something to work with industry, business, and process, and for our own people. Like you got a Scott, Doug, trying to do these development agreements, work with the industry, try to be clear, try to be stable, try to be supportive. Another areas that popped up, and ISL were really good at talking about densification of existing areas. And this is similar to major centers and even the smaller cities. Prior to the 60s, we did not have offsite levies. So your older infrastructure and your older center cores of your cities are running along with 4-inch water mains, or like what we've done over the last 7 to 10 years, is upsized water mains from 4-inch to 12-inch and sanitary upsized to something that's functional and workable, and then rebuilt the arterial and collector roadways under MSI and other programs. MSI and other programs are starting to disappear as our economy gets worse. If you're assigning offsite levies across all the new greenfield development, and then you've got areas like Uptown Core come back, sell their properties and transition to 10-story buildings and units, you can imagine the stress and the strain on sewer, water, and roadways and parking. So there's a case for that. The other case we've seen is brownfield sites, which we've just been heavily involved in with FCM in Ottawa, and actually Devon, Marathorpe, Olds, and Grand Prairie. We're all part of the National FCM Brownfield Committee now. They've cautioned us to define your brownfield limits, but just don't not consider brownfields as a form of densification and redevelopment. Classic case we have in town here is the Olds Chinook Edge High School lands. Yep.
You said Olds. Who sits on that committee for Olds? Yourself.
I had to put my credentials in place
Perfect.
just to make the grade. It was tough. We had to go through a number of sessions. I owe them one more document and probably a blood test too. I don't know. Anyway, it's been yeah.
Give your first board if you only have.
But it's really been excellent because we're pooling our resources across the country, and I know I've got asked to mentor a couple of communities as well. So anyway, so those are the things that we need to really talk about development. And so in the case of Chinook Edge, they became one of the groups that we have to have a consultation process with, because they have both brownfield, which we captured in terms of the Camp Clark sites and the sales there. But then the north side of Highway 27, we've got service issues, access issues. They've got 9 acres of land in the core of the community. So it applies to them as well. The college, when we went through the startup project for Pomeroy, we went through all this with the college district. And I know I've recently had the opportunity to have us criticized by others out in the world here that we did not look at the college in terms of offsite levies and proper taxation and that. Well, I can assure you, day 2, when I talked to one of the VPs, they were a little bit spellbound. Anyway, we also need, and one of the things that we look at map and Red Deer and look at our region around here, And how do we stay competitive in terms of economic development, industrial development, and all the things that we need to do? And we'd really like to understand through MAP, Alberta Ag Trade, Didsbury, Sundre, Bowden, everybody around us here. What basis should we be assigning our offsite levy fees, and how should we consider those communities, and maybe how they should consider Olds? We've seen one of our sister communities have difficulty that I won't name, and have struggled because of that. On the other hand, if we were to move up to the levels of some of the communities, we may not see any industrial development for 10 years. That's the long and short version, if you will. But also, that's the schedule right out of the existing bylaws, and the range of fees per acre is from 8,500 up to 23,000, depending on the size and type. And I have to apologize, I'm doing the shortcut view here. And in consideration of all our neighbors and around us, and understanding what everyone's doing around us, ISL and myself consulted with a number of the communities. The City of Leduc was simply just so supportive and so straightforward, and such a great group to talk to and work with and understand how they tried to simplify their process. They were just awesome. UDI Calgary, excellent. Strathmore, Sylvan Lake, excellent to work with, and goes on and on and on. Anyway, I know that's important to us, that we're communicating with our neighbors, but also understanding what their rates and fees and processes are as well. I'll take you back to 2014. We talked internally here. This is not in your overall reports, but just take you back in time. We looked at our surface area in the Olds here, 2,800 surface area, acres, where about half paid the vast majority of the taxes, and our new annexed lands, very low contribution. We've been changing that. Scott could attest to that, Norm, myself, people like Olds Concrete and others. We're bringing it along rapidly here. Again, we're trying to keep and maintain that 70-30 balance between residential and industrial, because industrial really is what supports and helps us drive the balance in our finances. When you look at downstream, something we talked about in 2013, and you had a really very straightforward example last summer. We replaced with the operations group the sanitary sewer crossing Highway 57. That was key to supporting as far away as the southeast industrial lands and all the flow downstream to the reservoir. That's a part of an offsite levy process that's well removed from, say, a southeast industrial 10-acre site when you get down here, but it's just as important, and that's why we go through this process. And cows are us. This is a shot, and I have to thank our fire and emergency services and their drone. They've shot lands that we are looking forward to for new development, redevelopment, and that. And we use these in our presentations. This is from right in the southeast corner of Olds, in what we call the PCM lands, looking at Olds Concrete, RV lands, cemetery, and an industrial area. And where we've used the drone videos in our economic development presentations to both continental and offshore agencies, it shows up and presents very well. Thank you. I know you have tons of questions. Save them for somebody else. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. I did read the documents, and I also am amazed at the cost for the various roadway systems that we will require in the very near future, and how we come up with that money is essential. Mayor Dahl, you have a question?
I'm surprised at such a lovely brief presentation that you gave us, and it's very informative. I'm also very happy to see that you incorporated the 4 major changes that were much needed since 2005 reviews. That must have taken you hundreds of hours to do because those documents are large documents. And I thank you very much. That will certainly help the town of Olds update its levies. Very impressed in the work you've done to date, and look forward to working more with this.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do still, folks, but we've got a great benchmark point.
Yeah, terrific. It was great information. When do you expect to be in consultation with the development community in reference to offsite levies, or you're a long ways away from that yet?
Next week.
Next week? That's not a long ways. That's good.
No, one of the things that we've looked for is who can help us in the longer term here. And we've had just a brief chat with the chamber, newly elected representative there. And we also are actively engaged in 5 of the quarter section owners right now. So they're generally aware that this is coming, but I didn't want to provide any other level of information until we had an opportunity for you to just take a look at the documents and look at the level of detail. We don't want you to be approached for the wrong reasons. We'd like you to be approached for the correct reasons.
Mayor Dahl.
Final comment is question with regards to those 4 major changes. Of course, the annex lands, understandable, but the Bunt report, now 6 years old, will that affect any of these changes, as well as the Mountain View Regional Water Services Commission charges and changes, and the South Red Deer Regional Wastewater Commission, that treatment facility? Are those going to make any difference now? Are some of them going to
No,
be changed?
as part of the work that ISL did in our detailed review, we took into account and we forced the reading of the business plans and for the regional commissions. And if you recall, we brought the Bunch report back in 2015, and you adopted the crucial piece, which was the exec summary, and that gave us the benchmark point there. We know there's a few things in the MDP where we might be able to reduce some of the roadway crossings, so say the rail system, but we need to have the MDP updated to allow us legally to do that. But keep in mind, this is a high-level document. There will be land sales. Some things will be changed in area structure plans. There will be some changes when they come down to a detailed street-by-street design. The impact of transportation, some days we're not sure. And Scott certainly has had some great and interesting conversations with AT, and more to come. But his hair's coming along quite nicely now.
I do have one question in reference to the estimated costs for various projects. These are in today dollars, not future dollars.
Bunt did the first round estimates on about 110 components. ISL's gone back and we were able to drop it a little bit. That's why it was key for us to anchor and project the dollar values into today's dollars. That's where the tenders come in. If you're challenged in court on an off-site levy and by succinct developers, you really very much need to have documented costs and incremental changes in costs. And that's why it's really critical 2009 to 2015 to document arterial road, water main replacements, new sanitary and newer intersections. And we got that base so we can withstand the court legal challenge.
Well, thank you very much for the very detailed report. And like I said, some of these costs, estimated costs, are pretty astounding. So thank you. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Mr. Wright, in your report you have like grants applied 25%. So we all understand that, yeah, the government isn't necessarily giving us out a whole bunch of money. So is 25% a conservative amount, or is that kind of a little high when I think about, or what?
You have to watch on each grant. There's a little nuance that ISL put in and noted out of the admin procedures for some of the water sewer grants. When you're 10,000, you get 100% of the grant available at that level. At 45,000 population, you get 0.
Yeah, I know, I read that.
So somewhere in there, as you progress and you grow, you want to keep an eye on that, and that is why they've picked around 25%.
Okay,
Fair enough?
yeah.
You bet.
So you're meeting with developers next week, and where do you go and council go after those meetings?
We given the fact that there's no one core group, we want to send out the document in draft with covering letters, either by electronic mail or special delivery to people that aren't in close proximity, and get a reaction back from them. And then we're going to have to bring back and talk internally with our leadership group and Garth and our tech teams on how do we go through this whole consultation process. That's where, when you're a larger city and you have all the subgroups and the Chamber of Commerce and UDI and all these groups, they can help you manage that process. We don't have that, so we're going to have to create something that's new and succinct for Olds. It may be an ad hoc committee with some extended reach outs. Our goal is to get into the consultation, that's our requirements by our policies and procedures and process, and try to work our way through it. And I can't make it any tighter than that right now until I get some more feedback from industry. And I apologize for that, but some things just aren't possible at this point in time.
So right now, we'll just accept this document for information, and we look forward to further presentations and a fairly lengthy review when you have
And we'll bring
more
back a
information.
briefing
Yes.
to PNP, and I think that's the most important part. And from time to time, with major land developers and other folks, we may want to introduce you to some that would like to speak to you directly.
Great.
So I'm sorry we can't be more succinct in that, sir.
Well, I think you were pretty succinct with your documents, so thank you very much. It was very detailed. I
Thank
would
you for your time.
accept a motion to accept the documents for information in the presentation. Mayor Dahl?
So moved. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All in
Okay, so what am I
favor?
moving?
All in
I
favor?
so move the off-site levy report for information and look forward to the future.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Have a very good evening at a basketball game. Thank you. Moving on to the Olds Institute presentation, or is it Mr. McInnes presenting the bylaw changes from the Olds Institute?
Yes, and not necessarily a presentation per se, but the Olds Institute is looking at more or less adopting a new set of bylaws. Notwithstanding the major changes from the current set of bylaws, a lot of the new document really is boilerplate. So I do want to just, I think, point out some of the sections that do require some comment from the Town of Olds as one of the essential members. And the first is on page 136 of your agenda package. And Article 3, the definitions and the interpreting of the bylaw, I think is an important section. So if there are any questions on any of the defining and interpreting piece under that section, I'll try and explain what our committee has done. And I believe Doug Martinson is leading this committee, Bill Hall, and who else is on that committee? Mitch?
Cody Becker.
And Cody. So that's the committee that's been working on the bylaws.
Just right back to the page.
Yes, so section 3, if there's any questions there. Then on page 137, the classification of members, some significant changes here, and we really are looking to broaden the tent and open up the opportunity to bring in both public members at large and other organizations into membership as well. So you can see that the proposal is 3 different types of classification for membership, so founding members, public members, and core members.
So, just a question, who would you sort of have in mind to be a core member?
Mountain View County.
Okay, that's what I presumed.
And then on page 40, just up an apology on page 40, I'm not sure what happened with the, yeah.
Page 138. So I'm looking down at 4.3.3, it says payment date for fees. The annual membership fees must be paid on or before annual general meeting of each year. Well, how much? And is that just for core members or new members, or can you explain that?
Yeah, so at this point, it is just the $5,000 for a new core member.
Okay, so that's the initial fee that, okay, so.
It does open the door for a membership fee, but certainly is not anything that the board has talked about at this point.
So this is the original amount from 11 or 12 years ago, that $5,000 fee. Is it your intention to leave it set at that initial entrance fee that you originated at that 5,000, or?
That's what's in the proposal for a new core member.
Okay. And then where it says payment date for fees, then there's no set fees over and above that to date?
No.
That may happen in the future? Okay.
So, yeah, page 140, I'm not sure what happened with the reproduction there, but that's a little messy. And then the only other section that I really want to point out is on page 150. And as I mentioned, we want to open up the opportunity to broaden the tent and bring in new organizations, but we also want to make sure that the founding members play a special role. And we had a robust discussion around this at the board table. You know, if Mountain View Power and ONET do start really providing significant revenue streams to the Olds Institute, there needed to be a mechanism by which, you know, there's not a hostile takeover or a small group of people come and sort of hijack the entire governance piece. So this special powers for founding members really was the mechanism that's being suggested. And we're lucky enough to have our executive director. So Mitch, if you got any other comments, certainly would welcome them.
Well,
Mitch, did you want to make any comments? Rudy?
Actually, at this point, I think Norm's covered
Yeah.
the 3 highlights.
Rudy? Councillor Dury?
Thank you, Chairman Harper. Just under 10.1A, you have appointment of the board chair. Would there be no election? Is it just among those board members that they decide that there's a significant member that they need to appoint or want to appoint?
No, the intention here, my understanding is that'll all be part of the annual general meeting. But if the founding members, specifically the town of Olds or 2 other directors from the founding members, oppose that, there is an effective veto.
I have a question in reference to if the society is dissolved. At one time, I thought, and I could be wrong on this, that any monies left over, any funds left over, or capital items, assets, would become the ownership of the town of Wolves. That is not anymore.
That never was, and it's actually it's not allowed under the Societies Act.
Okay, any further questions then? Okay.
So if any of you do, if something comes up, just send me a quick email. We've been asked to bring back comments on the proposed bylaws from our organizations to the next OI board meeting.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you. So, just to help me work through this, Mr. McGinnis. How would, if the society is to dissolve, then ONET is part of that, is it not? Like, how does that work? I just need a, we wouldn't dissolve them and sell their assets, give their assets to a charity. No. Like, how does that work? Can you explain it to me?
Yes, I can. I can try. And that particular piece, I'm going to bring back some suggestions myself to the board meeting. But so ONET does own assets, and ONET is a private for-profit corporation. The Olds Institute is the only shareholder of that corporation. The Olds Institute also owns physical assets related to the network. And sort of my understanding of the town of Olds' position is once the debt that was loaned to the Olds Institute through the loan bylaws that we have and the guarantees, then our stake in those assets is over. Correct. So then they would become wholly owned assets of the Olds Institute, and the Olds Institute, through the mechanisms in their bylaws, would be obligated to dissolve and get rid of those assets in some way. So I think we need to understand that piece of it with the fiber network. If the association does dissolve, and it's obviously an important asset in our community, so what would happen to that? So we need to have some better understanding around that.
Yeah, so get rid of, meaning they would, not just give it to a charity.
Under the Societies Act, that's really the only option that they have. You can't give dividends, or you cannot dissolve and assets go to your membership. There's a process through the Societies Act that has to be followed.
Does the town of Olds classify as a charity?
It does, but we're a member, so because we're a member, we're disqualified from receiving those assets.
I'm a little nervous about that then. Should I be?
No, because it's the same situation that we have right now, right? So again, where we're at is we've got security agreements. So until the debt is paid off, we do have security in place. What happens when that debt is paid off and if the OI dissolves? So I think what we have to protect from is the dissolving of the association. If it comes to a point where it's no longer adding value to the community, it's run its course or whatever the course may be, then this dissolution and liquidating of assets is going to be a pretty important discussion that we have as a community.
So you're going to bring something back on that?
Yeah, we'll charge Mr. Martinson to put his legal mind to use. Do you have any comments on that, Mitch?
I don't know that there would be anything that would preclude the organization from selling its assets prior to dissolution if they chose after they were out of debt situation too. So that's a consideration point, I think, of this conversation.
So you're going to bring something back, right?
Yes, we'll make sure that liquidation of assets post payment of the debt is considered in these bylaws as best it can be.
One other question, not that anybody would want to necessarily become a public member and pay a $1 membership fee. There's no mention what the fees are, I think, to be a public member. For example, the Olds Golf Course has limited rights for members who do not live within a certain area of the Olds Golf Course. And this was to prevent people from long distances to basically have opportunities to move the direction of the golf course in other directions than their mandate. And unlike other golf courses that are closer to the city, not that I'm going to say much, but is there a way, or does the Institute even want to entertain that in order to be a voting member, they have to be within a geographic region? And that's how, and this particular bylaw with the Olds Golf Course was in fact vetted, so.
So I'm going to respond a little bit different way, based on my understanding of why the membership thing has been included in the proposed bylaws. Right now, really, it's just the board of directors that are the members. And we want to provide the opportunity for people to have input into the association, wider than just the board. So we're hoping through this public membership to have people more involved, be involved with the AGM and initiatives, and can actually come and put their hand up and vote on initiatives beyond the board. So we haven't really talked about it in a geographical sense. But we've talked about it in, opening it up and inviting more people to be involved.
Yeah, and
Mitch?
I totally agree with that too, but we are the Olds Institute for Community and Regional Development, not City of Calgary Development.
So, forgive my comment. I can mention although that the geography was actually discussed for membership. So, in looking at those three types of members, and giving some veto privileges to the core members, I have to actually come down in front of me and search for it. But that was discussed, and it is in there. So finding that for.
Sorry, the geographical area is in there?
Yeah, considering the risk that could be associated with allowing people from a distance to take control of the board was absolutely considered.
Right, but is it written?
I'll have to go back and find it, but I believe it relates to that core membership and your veto yourselves.
Is it going to be in your bylaws, that
Yeah.
regional district?
So right now, voting members can be founding members, public members, and core members. And public members as long as they're 16 years of age.
That's correct.
So that's how your voting is.
So I certainly have noted that as feedback from our council, that the geography, and really it's always been Mountain View County.
But it probably should be written, right? Yeah.
Paper trail is best.
Councillor Walsh.
Just not to preclude somebody from outside the area. A lot of boards that I'm on, you can have one or two max. If you have a 15-member board, you may want somebody that's from a distance because of their expertise.
Yeah.
Or
Well, but they may choose to want to become a member, but in the case of, for example, the Olds Golf Course, they can become a member, they can express opinions, they can have input into meetings, but when it comes to a vote, they just can't vote if they live outside of a geographic area.
Yeah, that's fair. And that-
Yeah, that's very fair. So, that was my 2 cents worth, thank you. So, administration and our executive director for the Olds Institute has noted some of our comments. And do we need to make a motion to any effect then? I don't believe so.
I would like a motion just to accept for information, just so for the record.
Councillor Durier, a motion from you, please.
Yes, I would move that we receive the Olds Institute bylaw review for information.
Question. There is a point on this agenda that says, is it called a review? What is that point? Is it really called a review then? What is that there for?
Yeah, we probably should have caught it before the agenda went out. But,
Oh, okay.
So actually,
I did-
Councillor Duryea.
If we just say Olds Institute bylaws, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so moved. Councillor Duryea, do you want to repeat your motion for Ms. McKinnon?
I would move that we accept the Olds Institute bylaws for information.
All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to
Will you be
United.
bringing these back to us before they get approved through the Institute board? Just for information on those queries?
I was considering bringing them back after they're approved. You've given your input. Doesn't seem to be there's much controversy around, the big items, membership categorization and the special powers were really the ones that I wanted to point out today. The geography thing, and the liquidation pieces, we'll make sure that they get due consideration for sure.
Okay, moving on to item 7E, United Way 211 phone service, pages 151, 152. And my understanding there is no delegation to present to us. So.
No, so we've, this letter has come and we've been, Marcy's been in contact with the group and we have asked for some additional information and we're sort of hoping to have some of that so we could bring it forward today. The biggest one is cost. We don't know what the cost for participation in this is. But we have dealt with this in the past and Doug's got a briefing from when we've dealt with this in the past. So I'm just gonna ask him to refresh our memory on that.
So in July 2014, council had directed us, I think it was at a P&P or it might have been informally, I'd have to check, just to report a little bit about the 211 service. At that point it was a pilot project. And within the briefing note back a year and a half ago, there was a cost that we estimated, and I was not able to find how we came to this estimate, approximately $6,000 a year that would be incurred directly to the municipality. That would, at that time, the pilot had included a free online version of Alberta 211. There was no Olds direct pieces, but there was a Central Alberta piece that you were able to call into and find out during the pilot. We thought it was a valuable asset for a rural community like Olds. Living in a small community, citizens do not always have access to all services that are required, and this would assist them in finding those services, especially if they're not directly in our community, but they are a resource within our region. The other part that was unique to the 211 service was that they had trained staff who answers calls like a crisis line type of service, where if someone called in, they would begin to also query them a little bit further about what the issue is that they're looking for, because they'll have some baseline knowledge about helping them find the right resource. So that they might call in for a social support, thinking that they would be looking for, I'll just use this as an example, something like Catholic Social Services in Red Deer, and the line may be able to direct them to either that agency or another agency that would be able to help them with their problem. So that was some of the positives to it. The other issue was where they've set up. So if United Way has set up in other areas of the country, if they were looking for family supports or it was a family member that they might be dealing with in another area, they may also be able to refer them to supports that are in that area. The example being that was indicated was if we have a worker that would be working in Alberta that would be from New Brunswick and they were having family troubles at home in New Brunswick, they may be able to get some referrals as well. So that was the positives to it. There were some things that we identified. What would happen with some of the duplication if we're making efforts here? How would we ensure that those are being properly documented with 211 and vice versa? That if something was in 211, that we had it on our site as well. Because currently we had the community guide in print were available on our website to locate services. So we wanted to make sure that there was a consistency between that. So we thought there might be a gap there. But certainly one of the other benefits that we identified in 2014 was that members in our community who would be remote or a little isolated, it would certainly be an opportunity for those individuals to be able to easily find ways to research out or ask and reach out for help. One of the positives that we identified was the phone service is updated regularly by a contracted database company, which again, we also saw that as a gap potential to ensure that the information that we had in our community was consistent with that information. So that's what we had reviewed back in 2014. We understood that there was going to be a cost, and that was an opportunity to assist Albertans to locate and connect with public services that are close to their homes.
Councillor Duryea.
Thank you, Chairman Harper. I note that in the letter it says, I'm hoping to be able to meet with you at your earliest convenience or to discuss the exciting possibilities of joining the 211 network. Do we need to hear from, I guess it is Mr. Mitchell again? Would it be profitable for us to do that? Productive, maybe?
So we've asked that in lieu of that they just send us information. They've been hesitant to do that. So I think that I think that we'll try and get additional information, basically on what the costs are and the benefits, and bring that back.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Chairman Harper. I mean, this 6,000 was given, the price was given to you a while ago. Probably the price has gone up, and is that anywhere in our budget?
Not currently, no. And that $6,000 doesn't indicate in the briefing note how we derive that, but it is in the briefing note. So that's an estimate, and it said approximately in the briefing note.
Mayor Dahl?
I like the comments that you shared with us, Mr. Wagstaff, but I'm hesitant to hearing twice at this table that there has been no effort to send us the dollar cost from this party. I think we still need to have that communication or connection.
What I would suggest is that we accept this for information only at this time, and hopefully the United Way would in fact get back to somebody with the Town of Wolds, either Mr. McInnes or Mr. Wagstaff, to provide further information, so that once that further information is done.
I'd be happy to move that the United Way 211 phone service correspondence be accepted for information.
All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. So we have a question and answer period, and then we'll take a recess for 5 minutes for our media to ask questions if they need to, and then we'll move into any in camera. And I believe that Mr. Councillor Walsh, do we need all of the staff here? No? So therefore, unless Mr. McInnes needs you.
Olds Community TV, your go-to channel for news and information in Olds, Alberta.